She came from a minor German principality to the powerful Russian Empire and seized control there. She became the Russian Tsarina, waged wars, loved passionately, and made Russia great. In 1744, the future Catherine the Great traveled to Russia. At that time, she was still the young German princess Sophie Friederike Augusta of Anhalt-Zerbst. The empress had requested Sophie's mother to bring her daughter to St. Petersburg. Elizabeth was seeking a bride for her nephew in order to secure the succession. Peter was the Grand Duke of Holstein, another small German state. Orphaned early, raised strictly, sickly, he was supposed to be tame, but mentally and emotionally he was underdeveloped. He neglected his preparation for the regency. Catherine reported later, "In his first days, he tried very hard to impress me. I noticed and understood that he cared very little about the nation he would one day rule, and that he was still quite childish." My soldiers. Peter admired Frederick the Great and reenacted battles with toy soldiers. For his studies or civics, he had very little sense. He despised the Russians, and even Sophie, the German, he barely valued. "Respectfully, I remained silent and listened," she writes. That's how she gained his trust. He confessed that he loved a lady-in-waiting but would obey his aunt. Sophie still wanted to marry Peter, but above all to convince the czars. She managed to win over the church by converting from Protestantism to Orthodoxy. "I spent 4 months in the country and recited the creed in Russian before the entire court." She was given the Russian name Catherine Alexeyevna. The wedding ceremony was held on August the 21st, 1745. A triumph of staging. Diamonds, uniforms, endless ceremony. The bride played her part. Perfect. And the following night, instead of closeness, emptiness. Peter drank. Katerina waited. And that was it. The marriage remained unconsummated. Followed by years without affection. Peter's world became bizarre. He held court-martials for rats that had attacked his toy soldiers. Katerina was supposed to stand guard outside his door. "Only my great desire for the crown kept me going," she said later. Not love, ambition kept her in the palace. Katerina withdrew into herself and educated herself. Tin soldiers, Prussian uniforms, mockery of Russians. In 1750, he started yet another affair. Alienation became increasingly profound. Reading Voltaire, constitutional theory, Roman history, getting through his complete works takes stamina. She had it. Education became her weapon, and yet she was isolated, without a mother, without friends, without a husband, but with books. She was taught in a courtyard where almost no one was educated. Now, after 7 years childless, Elizabeth grew hard. Contacts with Katerina were cut off, letters censored. Pressure and a decision that would change everything. Katerina came to realize that if you have no protection, you must create your own. Sergei Saltykov, handsome, charming, attentive, the complete opposite of Peter. Her ladies in hint hinted the dynasty desperately needed an heir. Let him come from wherever. After 9 years, Catherine bore a son. Elizabeth took him instantly. Paternity? A minor matter. The throne was secured. Saltykov was elegantly sent out of the country. In this time of loneliness, Catherine found a new mentor, the English ambassador Charles Henry Williams. Williams was not only a diplomat, but also a man who recognized Catherine's potential. She gained an intense image of Western Europe through this relationship. The ambassador also strengthened Catherine's hunger for power and saw in her a future ally of his country. Catherine firmly rejected the diplomats' advances. She was shrewd enough to grasp that a romantic entanglement with a foreign ambassador would have amounted to political suicide. Although they didn't write love letters to each other, the correspondence was very emotional. Williams lent Katerina the then enormous sum of £100,000, a dangerous business. Stanislav Poniatowski, William's secretary, yes, a Polish count, clever, educated, his equal. The probably happiest relationship of her life, and at the same time politically sensitive. Secret letters, discreet messengers. In 1756, the 7 Years' War began. Prussia and Britain against Russia, Austria, France. Williams became an adversary and yet continued to be a correspondent. Katerina was expecting a child from Poniatowski. In December 1757, Katerina gave birth to a daughter. Once again, the Tsarina immediately took the child away and baptized her Anna Petrovna without consulting Katerina. Only 2 years later, the little girl died. Katerina lost not only her lover, but also her child. Tsarina Elizabeth sent her army against Frederick the Great. Russia declared war on Prussia and thus also on its ally, Great Britain. Suddenly, the English ambassador Charles Henry Williams was no longer Catherine's friend, but the representative of an hostile power. Despite hostilities between Prussia and Britain, Catherine kept writing the English ambassador about court sentiment and politics. Borderline, high treason. When the ambassador's £100,000 were used up, Catherine asked for money again. Even though she was fully aware of the grave danger, she wrote, "If it is at all possible, please make available to me a sum equal to the amount I've already received. If it's possible, carry this out in a manner that's even more secretive than the first time." After defeating Prussia, General Apraksin suddenly ordered a retreat. Bribery? English influence? Catherine's letters were partially intercepted. Elizabeth summoned Catherine in the middle of the night. Behind the screens, secret police, courtiers, even Peter. Katharina threw herself at his feet. "Send me, if you wish, to Stettin. Emotion, psychology, wordcraft." Not her. Peter, with his Prussian sympathies, was the problem. Elizabeth believed her. Katerina survived and gained stature. Winning alone isn't enough. You need allies. Grigory Orlov, war hero, daredevil, a surprisingly clear mind. It was love and a connection to the Guard. His brothers held key positions, the Guard regiments, Russia's true kingmakers. Orlov truly possessed the mind of a statesman. I have never seen anyone grasp everything he does quite so quickly. He immediately sees both sides of the problem, and the solutions flow from his mouth like a waterfall. Orlov was not only handsome and strong, but also intelligent. And Grigory was not alone. He belonged to a family of 5 brothers who all served in the Guard and had great influence in their regiments. The Orlov brothers controlled crucial parts of the Guard, the elite troops who decided the fate of the Tsars. Their support was absolutely critical for anyone who wanted to rule in Russia. The Empress Elizabeth fell ill, died in early 1762. At the funeral, Peter didn't shed a tear. Katerina was pregnant by Orlov and cautious. Peter ended the war in Prussia's favor. He put Russian troops in Prussian uniforms, favored German courtiers, confiscated church property. He alienated everyone, nobility, army, church, people. The Orlovs plotted the coup with officers. Political dynamite. Peter's plan to march against Denmark gave the final push. A public scandal. Peter's threat to banish Catherine now left absolutely no turning back. An accomplice in the planned coup was arrested. Alexei Orlov woke Catherine at the break of dawn. "Now we have to strike or we'll hang." Catherine drove into the city without a perfect script, but with courage. Her first stop was at the Ismailovsky regiment, where she denounced Peter as a danger to Russia and declared herself its rescuer. A guardsman's uniform, a steely gaze, few words. The soldiers knelt, calling her little mother. Regiment after regiment came over. More than 12,000 people gathered in front of the Winter Palace. Catherine stepped onto the balcony. Cheers. Catherine of all the Russias, discipline instead of looting. A revolution without blood, for now. In less than 24 hours, Catherine became the Empress of all Russia. The army, the people, the nobility stood behind her. Peter was completely surprised by the revolt. He hadn't recognized the signs of the times and was unprepared for what happened. 2 days later, he allowed himself to be arrested without resistance. The man who had begun as an all-powerful czar surrendered. Peter's abdication signaled the end of one of the shortest and most catastrophic reigns in all of Russian history. He signed the abdication document and requested permission to depart from Russia. St. Petersburg, winter 1762. Catherine was now Tsarina of Russia, but her reign was far from secure. The coup had succeeded, but the plotting and scheming had only just begun. The old networks of her murdered husband were forming at court, influential nobles, generals, court officials. Many doubted her legitimacy. Catherine stood utterly alone as a German princess on the Russian imperial throne. With clever tact, political instinct, and ice-cold calculation, she began to secure power. She rewarded, threatened, negotiated. She was no dreamer but a strategist, and she was aware of the greatest threat to her rule. Ivan VI. The former child emperor was still alive, imprisoned in the Schlüsselburg fortress. He was the final legitimate czar and a perfect instrument for any adversary who sought to clip Catherine's wings. For over 20 years, he had been kept hidden. Catherine decided to see him with her own eyes. Schlüsselburg, 1764. The Tsarina entered the gloomy fortress, and what she saw there made her shudder. Ivan was neither a madman nor a broken man. He was perfectly lucid, and he recognized her instantly and without a doubt. He didn't speak often, but he knew exactly who he was and that he was the legitimate ruler. Katerina left the fortress, and the decision had been made, secretly, quietly, without public spectacle. His grave remains unknown to this day. Grigory Orlov, soldier, daredevil, hero of the coup. He had helped Catherine gain power, and she had loved him. But over the years, the relationship became a burden. As early as 1762, she had a son, Alexei. But not even the bond of their shared child held them together anymore. She was just waiting for the right moment to break free. Then came Potemkin, Grigory Alexandrovich, a guards officer, clever, well-read, charming. People talked amongst themselves, and there were quiet whispers circulating all throughout the palace. A formal public ceremony was completely out of the question. It simply could not be considered. She would have had to share her power, and Catherine didn't do that with anyone. What they did share with each other, however, was unique. It was a deeply passionate connection that manifested itself both in intensely physical and profoundly political ways. 1775, Catherine gave birth to a daughter, Elisaveta, Potemkin's child. But the public learned nothing of it. The young girl grew up hidden under the protection of the Empress. Catherine knew, to be a great power, you must move borders. Tsar Peter the Great fought for Russia's access to the Baltic Sea. Now Catherine wanted to conquer the South, the Black Sea, the Crimea, maybe even Constantinople. In 1768, the Ottoman Empire declared war on Russia. Catherine forged alliances, practiced diplomacy, and dispatched her troops. Grigory Orlov and later Potemkin took command. For Catherine, it was more than just a military campaign. The plan was bold: occupy the Crimea, push back Ottoman influence, and create a new Russia, a flourishing province in the south. A shadow fell over the Tsar's empire, not from the west, but from within its own land. In 1773, along the Volga, the people rose up. Emelian Pugachev, a Cossack, declared himself to be Tsar Peter III. The uprising became the greatest revolt in Russian history until the Revolution of 1917. Serf Cossacks, peasants, religious minorities, they all followed the false Tsar. A war from below, against the system, against the nobility, against the Tsars. Catherine was shaken. The nightmare she had dreaded more than anything else had now truly become a reality. She knew it was no longer just about finding the truth, but about the very survival of her reign itself. While Europe was in a state of upheaval, Catherine received a message that changed everything. Grigory Potemkin, who was her closest confidant and her one great love, was on his deathbed. "I am terribly worried about your health," she wrote. "You belong to the state. You belong to me." Potemkin, weakened, answered with final words full of devotion. "Oh, my dear mother, how dreadfully sick I am. I beseech the Almighty to watch over your health." It was more than politics. That was love's last defiant gasp, a love that survived war, power, separation, and betrayal. In the year 1791, Potemkin passed away while on an inspection tour in Crimea, Catherine's final letter still clutched in his hand. With him, she lost not only a man, but the only person who understood her both as a woman and a ruler. His finest quality was courage, of the heart and of the mind, she wrote. That marked the end of a unique partnership, a secret marriage that evolved into a lifelong alliance, and a turning point for Catherine. From then on, she was alone. The mental strain attacked her body. Katerina grew tired, sickly, melancholic. And there was something else. Her son, Paul, the heir to the throne, whom she never loved, whom she never trusted. And he was now set to assume her legacy. She feared that he would destroy everything, that he could lead Russia back into darkness. And she was no longer able to stop him. November 17th, 1796, a day like any other. Katerina gets up early, makes her tea, works. In the afternoon, a stroke. She collapses in the bathroom, the most powerful woman in Europe. No one had anticipated such a sudden and abrupt ending. Paul there became Tsar, a man whom Catherine neither valued nor loved. What remains of her is encapsulated in her own epitaph. She wanted to please her husband, the Tsars, and the people. She read many books. She hated no one, had a truly good heart, and had friends. But what became of her children? Katerina gave birth to 4 children. It is likely that none were fathered by her husband, Peter III. And yet he recognized the firstborn, Paul, as the heir to the throne. Paul I, born in 1754, a difficult child, an unloved son, but ultimately, he was the only legitimate heir to the throne. After Catherine's death, he ascended the throne, but his reign was short and ended tragically. He introduced unpopular reforms, stripped nobles of their power, and was ultimately assassinated in 1801. Officers mounted a midnight coup. Paul's death was officially listed as occurring in his sleep. The truth didn't emerge for another 50 years. Anna Petrovna, born in 1757, died when she was barely 2 years old. A short life. There are hardly any traces in the archives. A quiet chapter. Alexei, born in 1762, probably from the affair with Grigory Orlov. He grew up in the shadows, far from the public eye, without a title, without a claim. A child who was never allowed to exist politically. Elizaveta, born in 1775, the secret daughter of Catherine and Potemkin. She too was kept hidden. Her true parentage remained a secret known to very few. Katerina had her raised in safety, far from the court and away from the intrigues of power. Russia became stronger under Catherine's reign than ever before, a great power, an empire. Catherine II, the last great ruler of Europe, between light and shadow, and to this day remains one of the most fascinating women in world history.